Good evening, folks. Welcome to the 47th episode of the Ken Matias Sports Podcast. I have editorial writer for NESN, Tim Crowley. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, Ken.
Yeah, no problem at all. Like I've told you, I know that we got pushed back and stuff like that, but I figured you can, the floor is yours. You can talk about your career, and I see you got a really strong passion for baseball, and so do I. So go for it.
Yeah, no, it's been cool to be able to do that at NESN for about 2 years now. Really diving into my craft with mostly Red Sox coverage and be able to help out with every other sport that we do, and
Mhm.
obviously a busy time in the city. But no, but I mean baseball goes back as about as far as I do. Played growing up, played through high school, and knew that that was not going to continue forever. So I wanted to make sure that I would stay involved in baseball in some sense. So started trying to do every form of media I could in college, whether that was podcasts, radio hosting, play-by-play, anything that was going to keep me around baseball. And that ultimately led me to a couple awesome summers with the Cotuit Kettleers in the Cape Cod Baseball League, where it's cool to see so many of those guys from our summers starting to make their way to the majors now. And could not be more thankful for those years of being able to network down there and really hone in on the day-to-day that goes into covering baseball at a high level. So really appreciative for those years, and then had some time doing some Mets and Yankees stuff as a freelance editorial producer for SNY when I was still in New York at Hofstra University. Covered some of the games at Hofstra as well. Hosted a baseball talk show on our radio station WRHU, and all that led me to 3 weeks before I graduated college and still didn't have a full-time job yet. Was still doing a little bit of stuff for SNY, and then you just kind of trust that timing works out sometimes. And the NESN position opened up, got the job in June, started in July, and off we went covering the Red Sox.
Oh, that's pretty cool, honestly. And you mentioned the Cape Cod League. I had a couple of summers ago, I worked for local cable access, and they were doing videography, and I was on first base, got to talk to scouts, got to talk to a crap ton of people that are so involved in the Cape Cod League, and especially, what stood out to me was the scouts. I mean, seeing
Yeah.
scouts from all over the place, Sox, Royals, whoever it was, and the amount of like people that just work for free, like just to get the experience is just amazing. And then you got kids coming from the University of Michigan and all these like high-end D1 schools that I hear legit on TV, and now they're in the Cape for the summer. But yeah, speak more about your experience about that, because Cotuit, I know it's a little far drive, but speak about your experience about that.
Yeah, Cotuit was a really cool place to be, and I knew for years that that was something I wanted to pursue in college. I remember I went to a lot of Harvard Mariners games growing up as a
Hmm.
kid. We had, our family had been around the coaching staff for a while. We had friends of ours that lived, and had a Cape house right down the street from the field. And I remember being in like eighth or ninth grade and being at a Mariners game in the summer and seeing, a table with like three college kids, doing a broadcast. I'm like, oh, all right, so there may be a path here, and started looking into that probably as early as junior year of high school. I remember, looking around and saving information so I'd be ready to go when college got rolling. I remember it was COVID summer of 2020. Obviously, the season didn't play. Nobody played that summer for the most part until Major League Baseball started late in July. But I'm like, you know what? Let me see if anybody's thinking about next year already and see what we can start looking at. So this was after my freshman year at Hofstra. Reached out to at least seven of the 10 teams. Cotuit got back to me first and just said, we have a writing thing open if you want to do media. And I'm like, whatever's gonna get, whatever's the way there. And started with that. Did a bunch of like the podcasts and some feature writing throughout that winter, just with everybody else, just waiting for baseball to come back and be ready to go in
COVID was
2021.
tough. Trust me.
Yeah.
Being a big sports fan, I don't mean to cut you off. It was tough just dealing with no sports till like July, and especially the
Oh
baseball
yeah.
season starting in July. I was like, I look forward to all the seasons, but baseball every single year, opening day is just huge for me because I just love baseball. But continue, sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, like, waking up for 3 months just trying to watch like KBO because it was the only baseball
Oh,
on was
tough.
certainly it was a different era.
Hmm.
But it was great, and it made it that much more rewarding when the 21 season rolled around and had so much fun. There was so much talent on that team for Katuitt that summer. Make a run. They were within a game of going to the Cape League Finals. An incredible broadcast team as well. Chris Carey is now one of the voices of the A's
Hmm.
and having a great job down there. His brother Stefan's right behind him, and they put together some great work for the Double A Amarillo Sod Poodles. Lauren Kirkley was our sideline reporter. She's been amazing. Had some time out as a TV MMJ out in Denver. So that team for me really became like a family in terms of learning how to grow on air. lift each other up, work through the tough days because even in, it's not the 138th that a minor league team plays or the 162 that a big league team plays, but you still go through the day-to-day
Hmm.
grind on the Cape. And so you do have days where you show up to the park and it's like, there's another game. The team's not playing well. If the team's not playing well, we didn't have a good broadcast last night. Like it starts to wear. So you kind of start to be able to lean on each other, grow together, get through those days and embrace the good ones. That really started for me in 21. And then it was cool to know that the day after our season ended, because I had expressed interest, I had, gotten to do a couple fill-in innings during the season, that I was told the day after the season ended in 21 that I would come back in 22 as one of our play-by-play broadcasters, which was something, again, that dated back to those years ago in Harwich of something I always wanted to do. So to do that with Cotuit, it was really surreal. And that 22 season, the roster was stacked again, particularly in the first half before the draft. So many talents around the board, and another great season. People to work with in the booth. My broadcast partners Jake Starr and Riley Pay, they're right in that conversation of
Hmm.
becoming like family too, and both now making their names in minor league baseball. Jake's in his third season with the Reading Fighting Phils, the Phillies AA affiliate, and then Riley obviously had a great couple years up in Portland and is now the AAA voice of the Tacoma Rainiers in the Seattle Mariners organization. So the Cape produces talent, whether it's on the field or off the field. And, I've been able to work with some incredible people. And again, you look at what the setting of Cape Cod baseball is. It's all these people that go to the beach throughout the entire day. They
Hmm.
come back, they rinse off, and they come straight to the ballpark. Like that's all it really, that's all the Cape League surrounds itself with. And obviously, great talent. You talked about, the scouts and the connections you get to
Hmm.
make there. There's so much to love about it. And for me, it was so cool to see, like you mentioned, how many kids, not just for players, obviously I knew about that growing up, but how many interns come from across the country. We had people coming from the West Coast to work with us
Yep.
in 21 and 22. For me, I always knew about the Cape League, growing up in Massachusetts, that, you always hear about it and you're at the games when you're a
Yeah.
kid. But to see so many people coming from around the country to, like you kind of mentioned, embrace that opportunity to grow their careers was really special.
No, absolutely. And it's amazing that people will travel all the way from the West Coast just to the East Coast for the summer or whatever. They're at their university and they hear about the Cape League and it's like, I got to be involved, you know? And nothing against the Futures League, whatever leagues are out there for the summer. And I know Rhode Island has the Newport Gulls too. But I mean, I just feel like the Cape League is just like one step closer to the majors because you just literally had Paul Skeens here like a few years ago and now he's pitching in Pittsburgh. It's like, wow, like it's amazing the talent you see, like Adley Rushman. Just trying to just name it's too many names, but I'm just like having like names come to mind and stuff, and it's just it's a great atmosphere. It's great to see these players be all successful, be at their D1 schools, here for the summer, the host family, it's just good atmosphere. I mean, there's not much else to say about it besides just meeting a lot of great people around the country, I should say.
And that to me is the biggest part. It's a great resume look for the
Hmm.
the interns. It's obviously great development in terms of sharpening skills for the players. But the Cape is so about the people, and you especially the pillars that you mentioned, the host families, the volunteers. They set that foundation for all these kids to come in from around the country and have the summer of their lives. And it is no exaggeration because that's what a summer on the Cape is.
Yeah, absolutely. And now jumping gears a little bit, talk about your time at NESN because I've been there before. I've interviewed with them. Seems like you guys got a nice facility there. You share it with other things. And talk about your time with NESN because I definitely grown up watching NESN since I was a kid. So
As did I, and that's what made this opportunity, really just like you're pinching yourself. I remember the day I got the call, saying that this was going to happen, and to be, within a month later, covering a game at Fenway Park, and I grew up loving all Boston teams, but especially, with baseball as the center of
hmm.
my background, that still like to me didn't feel real the first time doing that. And then you kind of settle into the groove. But yeah, no, Nesson, the opportunities have been outstanding. I love my editorial staff that I work with, and there's a lot of talented writers that, and all of us that really work well together. Everyone has a different strength or at least a different niche. We all cover everything, but it certainly stands out like what everyone's the most
Hmm.
passionate about, and it shows in the written coverage of our website. Love the opportunities and the diversity of the stories we get to cover. We'll do news during the day. We'll cover games at night. We'll tell feature stories. We'll have exclusive interviews. It's really cool to see how much our department does and the amount of content every day. We have people writing 6 or 7 stories a day by themselves.
Wow.
So the content stream never ends on NESN.com, and it's been really fun to be a part of it for 2 years.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it just sucks to see like they're shying away from the editorial department, especially with all like key featured writers like yourself and whoever else like that's been at it for a while. But you guys always produce great content. You guys got a nice team, like you said. But what's one takeaway you'll take from Nesson, with your next adventure? Or, like what are you looking forward to after like the whole Nesson thing just comes to an end, unfortunately?
Yeah, just versatility and be able to get out as much content as you can.
Hmm.
There are times where I think that quality over quantity is important, not probably is important, is important. And I certainly want to focus on the quality moving forward. But you know, this Neston chapter, will continue on for a little bit. Still excited about what we still have left to do here.
Hmm.
But the training's been amazing, and this was my first really chance to start going on site for games like this. SNY we just wrote a lot from home. Obviously, I covered a lot of games in college and stuff, and the Cape League, but to be able to be at Fenway Park and Gillette Stadium and TD Garden covering all these events, because it went beyond the four major sports. I covered the Savannah Bananas coming to Brockton and then at Fenway
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah.
I covered UFC and Sean O'Malley winning his first title. Putting the belt around him at the Garden. It's still one of the loudest crowd pops I've ever heard
Oh, I believe
in
it.
in
UFC
person.
is just so popular.
It's different too, and I think part of it with the that level of a crowd pop was the way they set the media is right around the octagon. So
Hmm.
when a big moment happens, all that sound is crashing down on you from the way the arena works. So now it's
Hmm.
like all these players that talk about like loud crowds over the years in that building, you understand it because it's just coming down on top of them.
Hmm.
And that's what I felt, in that moment when O'Malley won with a knockout. You just felt all of that coming down. It's like, whoa, like it's like you hear it as a writer for a Celtics or Bruins game when you're up on the top
Yeah.
floor, but it's a different sound when you're
Hmm.
down on the floor like that.
No, for sure. And I mean that must be so cool just waking up each day, either going to Watertown or just like you said, Fenway, Gillette, TD, wherever you need to go cover games. Like that must be a great feeling just waking up saying, "Hey, look, I'm gonna go cover the Sox game tonight. They're versing Toronto." Like Crochet's on the mound. It's like that's like a childhood dream of mine just to just wake up and be like, "All right, I'm gonna drive to Watertown maybe during the day, shoot to, the game at night, whatever it is." But um as far as I don't know how much you can talk about like the whole like how they're shying away and stuff. But what's basically next for Nesson on their editorial side and their basically digital side? Like, what way are they going with the next chapter, 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, there's still going to be like plenty of written coverage. Like the
Hmm.
website isn't going to look too much different. There will still be articles on there. It's just, it might be the same people, it might be different people. We're
Yeah.
still, kind of waiting to see, and I'm sure, Nesson will kind of put it out when that's ready to go. But it won't be too different in terms of, what you'll see on the website. There's still going to be plenty of written coverage.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was just curious because I don't know if you could go into logistics of it, and it's none of my business, but I was just kind of curious where they're headed. But yeah, I mean, like talking about Nesson, seeing the on-air staff, Tom Karen, just a whole bunch of people. I'm like, just a lot of people that have just contributed over the years, and Jim Rice, and I know I'm mentioning the baseball guys, but Sophia Yurstevich, I should say, Dale Arnold, Billy Jaffe, Graycroft. It's just you guys have a great staff there, and it's just Nesson just keeps going up and up and up in my book, and obviously it's the New England Sports Network for a reason, But what else did I want to talk about? The Sox, actually. I know I'm jumping everywhere, but I definitely wanted to hit on the Sox because it's been a little up and down, 8 and 9 through 17 games. What's your thoughts so far on this team? And you think they should actually be like a 10, 12 win team by now, seeing that it's already a couple weeks into the season?
The good news is what's around them is what was expected, is that the American League is very wide open and that the
Mm-hmm.
National League is far superior this year. Again, the Red Sox are a game under 500 at the time of this recording, and they're, a game and a half out of first place, or a
Mm-hmm.
game out of first place, whichever one it was, as they started the series with the Rays. We've seen the flashes of what this team can be. Obviously, the 18-run outburst on Sunday Night Baseball against the Cardinals last week. Garrett Crochet absolutely mows through the White Sox on Sunday afternoon. So all those things you're starting to see the flashes. It's just through the first month we're still seeing some of those worrisome things that made them a team that missed the playoffs the last 3 seasons, which is they're not hitting well with runners in scoring position. They're not really doing much against left-handed pitching, and they're really still struggling to find some rhythm defensively.
Hmm.
They already lead the league in errors again. They led the American League in 23 and 24 in errors. That was, I think, the biggest thing that people were ready to move on from, especially after all the offseason narrative of was it still going to be Devers at third? Is Bregman really going to take over? Is he going to play second? Is he going to play third? Is Christian Campbell starting the season? It seemed like once they locked in that plan of Campbell at second, Bregman at third, Devers to DH, and everyone knows how great the outfield has been defensively. Again, Wilyer Abreu, who still probably gets forgotten about, won a Gold Glove last year and has been red hot at the plate to start the year. Seeing those is still the a few worrisome angles. So again, it's a team that strikes out a lot. It's a team that makes a lot of errors. It's the first month of the season. I'm willing to cut some leeway, but that's going to be a conversation in mid-May to say, all right, if these things are still happening, where do they look in the AL East?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just tough to see them at 8 and 9 because this team had so much upside promise from the fans, probably the writers, the beat writers, the whole coverage on the team. Because I mean, seeing Christian Campbell make it out of spring training, one out of the top three prospects. I mean, I think Roman Anthony could have made the team. Marcelo, he had a good spring too. So these three guys, but it's like, where's the room for them, you know? Because you got Abreu, Duran, Rafaela, like you got so much talent and young talent locked up for a long time. You just don't know what these guys are going to do. I mean, Bregman seems like he's starting to hit a little bit because I've been trying to keep up and watch as much as I can because obviously I just love the game. But I mean, seems like Campbell's kind of slowed down a little bit since the beginning. So what's your thoughts been on Christian Campbell as he had a hot start and he's kind of slowed down a little bit?
Yeah, it was cool. I know the whole narrative after the first day
Mhm.
was everything that happened on Felger and Maz the next day, and Twitter kind of freaking out that he
Over
had a
Maz.
that he had a few rough at bats to start
Yeah.
the game, and rightfully so. His first MLB at bat was striking out against a curveball from Nathan Eovaldi that might have almost hit him.
Hmm.
So I know everyone flipped out about that, but he ended the game with his first big league hit. He
Yep.
caught fire after that, and I think the streak continued. He's when you're talking about a player that reaches base in his first 14 major league games, like there's really not a lot to complain about.
Hmm.
Are there a few things at second you'd like to see cleaned up? Yes. But again, it's a learning curve, playing his first major league position, trying to get a feel for the double play combo with him and Trevor Story, which for the most part has still been pretty good.
Yeah.
But I know that, when you're a rookie, things get magnified when you make a mistake. Having that little bit of a disastrous ninth inning on the home opener against the Cardinals, they ended up still winning the game. But, kind of having a botched double play ball with Bregman that sails over Campbell's head. You had the play in the Toronto series where Campbell fields the ground ball at second on a double play ball, starts to take it to the bag himself, then kind of hesitates and flips the story, and the play kind of blows up from there.
Hmm.
So those are going to happen. Again, this is a rookie with a lot of expectation. Obviously, a brand new contract. The extension came in, within the first week or so of the season when he signed. I believe that news came out during the Baltimore series,
Yeah, I
and
believe so.
so
Yeah, it was him and Crochet within like I think it was like Monday,
right,
Wednesday for both those guys.
right. So when you're a rookie, those things are going to be magnified. People should feel really good about what they've seen from Christian Campbell. He's going to hit. I think his impact in the order is only going to improve throughout the season. And now it's only a matter of time, like you mentioned, to see when Roman and Marcelo come up, which both of them were absolutely qualified to make the team.
Hmm.
Marcelo was maybe the best bat the Red Sox had in the spring. Obviously, Roman flashed that raw power again. The home run that he hit during the not the future game, the spring breakout game.
Yep.
So I'm not sure it's landed yet. So, you have two guys, and Roman's obviously smashing the ball in Worcester and not exactly ideal hitting conditions at Polar Park to start the season. So
Hmm.
it really is just a matter of where's the room. You know, there's probably more of an argument for Roman at some point because outside of, Duran has not been Duran yet. He'll
Still
get
early.
there. Yeah, it's early. He's hitting the ball hard, just not seeing results. The conversation is, is there a move with Rafaela around the field to, make room for Anthony? Because eventually, and it maybe already the bat in Worcester's getting hard to deny.
Hmm.
For me, it's more interesting of what you do with Marcelo because Trevor Story's not giving that spot up, and Story's
No.
actually been probably their best bat over the weekend
Yeah.
in that
Hmm.
Chicago series. So there's a lot of interesting moves to make in terms of how to kind of shake up the lineup and just get some consistency. Because, like I said, we saw the flashes. They posted 18. They're firing on all cylinders against the Cardinals, and then the offense went flat for a week. But
Yeah.
that happens. That's the course of 162.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great to see them score 18 runs on Sunday Night Baseball, but then it took them basically a week to hit another home run thanks to what Story yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, literally won a week. Literally won
Yes.
a week.
So they went from Sunday to Sunday, and then they had a struggle with the Blue Jays series where they lost 3 out of 4, which you should have split with them, but it is what it is. It's still early on. But going back to Campbell, I like how Cora is actually playing him in the outfield. I know a little bit in the minors, he kind of played a little bit of the outfield. So I like how like he's utilizing these guys just to not play second, third, first, whatever it is. And he's trying them at different positions because you got so much talent coming up, especially a lot of position players, more than pitchers, my opinion. But you probably pay more attention closely to the prospects and stuff like that. But I mean, they're starting to get it together in a way. I mean, I'm not trying to look down on them. I love the beloved Red Sox. Like I say, I follow them closely. But the fact that the outfield is pretty stacked between Duran, Rafaela might, I know he's kind of been struggling, and Abreu, but I mean, do you see basically Rafaela turn into a utility player and then them calling Roman Anthony up, or how do you see that kind of going if his woes kind of continue? Because I think he's batting under like 200 right now.
Yeah, if there's flexibility to be kind of shifted around in the outfield, that feels like it because even with, I don't even want to call it a slow start. I guess just a
Yeah.
lack of results start from
Hmm.
Duran. You're not moving him.
No.
You're not moving Abreu off a spot. It's probably going to be Rafaela kind of moving around. But again, it's like you mentioned, Alex Cora has one of the hallmarks of his managerial tenure has been not even utilizing,
He knows
but
from experience, from basically
yeah,
being second base and short and whatever else positions he played around the infield.
he has loved using versatility to his advantage
Hmm.
and being able to mix and match. And we still see that with, all right, there's a lefty on the mound. Let's make sure that Romy Gonzalez and Rob Refsnyder are in the lineup. I think that was more of a need the last few years when the roster and the lineup wasn't as name driven or as stable as it's been, which, mind you, and this is why I'm not really as worried about the offense. This has been a team that's been top 10 in the OPS for
Hmm.
the last 7 years, dating back to 2018. Like they always hit. So they'll find their way, but it is interesting to see how they try to utilize some versatility. And it feels like I know they extended Rafaela, but it's not a figure in terms of money enough to justify, all right, you have to keep him there.
Hmm.
There's argument to, given how good the glove is in center field. Like no one's denying that.
Especially the catch against Toronto to open up the game the other day was amazing.
Outstanding, and it's
Hmm.
it's really hard to move a glove like that out of a premium position in center field because the Red Sox have a chance to be really strong up the middle. With Story back at short, and the defense you have in center field. It just feels like the way that the lineup needs a bit of a boost. That's probably the way to make it happen. If Anthony comes up, it's probably Rafael going to that type of role. But again, we'll see what that decision is. It's probably still a few weeks away, but it's going to be one that they'll have to talk about internally.
Yeah, for sure. And switching gears to the pitching staff, I mean, outside of Crochet, Bueller's starting to get it together a little bit. Hauk looked decent the last time he versed Toronto, I should say. But what's your thoughts, obviously, on the staff with Bayo hopefully having another 1 or 2 rehab starts? Giolito coming up from Worcester seems like they're doing pretty good. So, what's your thoughts on the staff? And obviously, Fitz going down to an injury recently,
Yeah, that was a little discouraging,
for
especially
sure.
given how well he pitched that day.
Hmm.
He cruised through 5 innings, didn't give up a run, and the stuff looked a lot better. The velo's up. It was down for a few starts to Nicole, but as a whole from last year, the velo is up. The stuff looks really good from Fitz. I've been impressed with what he's done. His development in AAA last year after coming over in the Yankees trade.
Yep.
So he's on the 15-day IL. Hopefully, it's not too long of a recovery process for him. Bayo coming back is huge. The thing with Giolito is just you still haven't seen him pitch in a Red Sox uniform
Yeah.
yet, so you don't know what you're getting. You know what he was. He was an innings eater. One
Hmm.
of the more durable starters, and at his peak, a Cy Young candidate back in 2019. If the Red Sox get somewhere in the middle of that, that's fantastic. I think what's really encouraging for them, and we'll get to see it this next trip through the rotation in Tampa, is we've seen Tanner Houck and Walker Buehler get roughed up. We've seen
Hmm.
them give up a couple home runs, and we've also seen them come back, make adjustments, and have a really good third time through the rotation. What that looks like in the first 2 games of this Tampa series, I think for me, is really how you try to judge the staff after a month because they're going to need, at best, you know, average production for them. I don't think Tanner Houck's gonna be an all-star again. You can't expect Walker Buehler to be what he was at the peak of his powers with the Dodgers. But
Yeah.
if they can be durable for you and going six and taking that, giving that bullpen a manageable workload, I think Houck and Buehler are two of the most important arms in terms of just keeping the line moving. You have an ace in Crochet now. There's expectations that come with that, and he's embraced them openly, which is
Hmm.
fantastic, and he's producing to meet that level. Hopefully Fitz is back in a relatively short manner. Bayo getting back is huge. Obviously, he needs to, it was a weird year for Bayo last year, and I thought the Netflix documentary actually did a really good job capturing that and kind of the ups and downs of his season. But Bayo coming back is huge. How can Bueller start the series in Tampa is going to be really telling to see how you view the staff at the end of April.
Yeah, I know. I know it's early to jump on them, but it just seems like the staff's been a little inconsistent to me. Obviously, I mean
Yeah,
it's April.
perfect word.
It's April. It's not September going into the playoffs in a couple of weeks. So I get like the whole staff's a little down. Fitz with an injury. Bayo's coming back at some point. Giolito's coming back. But how do you think Newcomb kind of fits into the picture? I know he's just a spot starter right now, but do you think once those guys come back that he'll shift to the bullpen or he'll go to AAA and maybe just outright designated for assignment, I should say?
Yeah, they've needed like an innings eater just to
Hmm.
kind of like throw out there and play mop up the last few years. Last year's Chase Anderson, it's been Cooper Criswell all times. Like it's probably
Mm.
Newcomb going to that role next.
Oh, yeah, I figured. I mean, I don't think they should cut ties with him. So, I mean, he's been okay as a spot little starter, but Um, what else did I want to hit on? So the bullpen, obviously, it's looked a little shaky over the weekend. Obviously, the Fitz start that ended up getting blown out by Chapman there, and obviously they lost the 2 out of 3 to just Chicago. But how do you want to assess the bullpen after kind of starting kind of strong?
Yeah, work in progress. I think I want to see what they look like when Liam Hendricks is back and
Hmm.
ready to go.
That's
Obviously,
another guy.
hasn't pitched the season. Has been on the IL to start. Went on the IL on opening day. I want to see what his role looks like and just being able to add another leverage guy. I know he hasn't been the best in his last few starts. He gave up another run on, or in his last few outings. I know he gave up a run Sunday, but I still think it's so big having Garrett Whitlock back in this multi-inning role. Um, if it's somewhere in between the struggles as a starter and the elite season that 21 was, I think the Red Sox are in great shape to have an arm like that. And I think Aroldis Chapman's been good. Again, it's one blown save. He came back, he got the job done again on Sunday. Everyone has watched enough of Aroldis Chapman,
That's
especially
true.
within the American League East, to know
Hmm.
what this experience is going to be like. But it's hard to not have some confidence in a closer that's still throwing 101 at 37 and strikes out batters at the rate that he does. The Aroldis Chapman experience is a very complicated one, but for the most part, so far, his production's met the moment.
Yeah, and I just see that's another thing with the pitching staff and the starting staff and the bullpen. I just see it going up from here. I don't think it can really get any worse because with guys coming back, you mentioned Whitlock being an innings eater. That's who they needed. I didn't mind him as a starter as they tried him. Was it last year or the year before? I'm like, all right, this guy can start games. He can get you 5, 6 innings, but I think his best suit, and especially in 2021, was basically out of the bullpen.
Hauk proved it wrong. I didn't
Hmm.
really want to see Hauk go to the rotation, but you've been an all-star right-hander out of it in 24 and at least hopefully a durable one in 25. The Whitlock one, I never understood the
Hmm.
argument. And it was 3 years of trying it, and it was just begging for years, to just let him go back to where he eats.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, let the stuff play for multiple innings, use him every 3 to 4 days,
Hmm.
and let him do what his best role was. He carried that bullpen down the stretch in 21. And that was again, that was a team that was not expected to be a contender. It was within 2 games of the World Series, and Garrett Whitlock obviously had a massive role in that. So again, is it safe to expect a sub 2 ERA from him and totally catch the baseball world by surprise again? No.
No,
But
no,
having a durable reliever to be able to go multiple innings and have the stuff, look better than it has been as a starter is really encouraging for him.
no. You're absolutely right. But I know we're short on time. I appreciate it, Tim, you being a guest on my podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.